Hello, welcome to Mike's Guide to Advanced Days Medical for Dummies and Dumbos. It's real simple and we'll just get straight into it. So there's two main types of casualties. You have boo-boo and you have big boo-boo. Boo-boo, you're generally awake, you can probably deal with it yourself. Big boo-boo, you or somebody else is unconscious, probably a bit more steps in getting you or your casualty up in the fight, and we'll just get to those. So there's main types of boo-boos is avulsions. You get these from everything. From being shot at, from being exploded, from being ran over, to gents fat nan driving by on a Segway, falling off and breaking your pelvis. These generally cause huge amounts of pain and they can cause blood loss very, very quickly. They're an extremely high priority wound that you want to deal with. You have velocity wounds. These also cause large amounts of pain and they generally speaking cause medium amounts of blood loss, as it depends how many you have. Obviously if you've been shot once you're going to bleed less than somebody who's been shot about 5-6 times. Priority is still high but slightly less than avulsions in my opinion on a one-to-one basis. And then you have cuts, lacerations, punctures, crushes, abrasions, all generally low priority wounds. They cause low amounts of pain and they cause low and slow amounts of blood loss. And then you have fractures. These will cause a fair bit of pain when they actually happen, and if you break your arm you'll have increased weapon sway. If you break your leg you'll limp, you won't be able to sprint. You can simply fix them with a splint by a medic or either your squad lead once you or your patient is stable. And this is generally speaking for rifle boys, but can also be applied to anyone. This is just how to self-treat. And it's just like basic, just if you've got a wound, bandage it. Except in advanced, if you have a heavily damaged limb and you're worried about passing out, you can tourniquet it. Tourniqueting just means that you slow down and limit the amount of blood that you're losing. You still will lose blood, but you won't lose a lot of it. Just once you've actually bandaged yourself, just don't forget to remove the tourniquet later, otherwise you will actually start getting pain from that tourniquet staying on. Once you are bandaged, just simply go to your medic or your squad lead and ask for them to stitch. We are going to be playing with wound reopening to my knowledge, and basically all that means is if a wound reopens you just need to bandage that wound again, but once you're stitched you don't need to worry about that wound reopening. That wound will stay closed until you take another injury. And if you're in pain then use a morphine if you're a giant pussy. And the reason why I say a morphine is because unlike in basic medical you can overdose yourself on morphine and epinephrine, and also unlike in basic, morphine isn't instantaneous. It takes a little while sometimes to get in the system and completely remove all traces of pain. And then we go on to the second type of casualty, which is the unconscious boy. Now if you stumble upon this, regardless of whether you're a rifleman or a medic, first thing you should do, check response, make sure they have a heart rate. If they don't have a heart rate, if you're alone, begin CPR and radio or call for somebody to come and help you. If you're with other people or somebody else has come along to help you, then one of you do CPR while the rest of you work on fixing their wounds. And the same goes for as if you were treating yourself. Tourniquet their appendages if they're heavily damaged and work on trying to stop the blood flow. While you're doing this though, make sure you've got somebody trying to keep check of the pulse or their heart rate. And again, just like with yourself, once the wounds are healed, give them a stitch once they're stable and give the boy blood if they've lost it. Generally speaking, if they've lost a small amount of blood, 250 ml should be enough. If they've lost a medium amount of blood, 500 ml. And if they've lost a lot of blood, generally speaking, 1000 ml should still be alright. It just takes a little while to get into the system. And again, you might be asking, well, what if their heart rate isn't stable? Then just keep doing CPR. General riflemen have a base chance of restarting their heart with simple CPR. Medics, generally speaking, have a higher base chance of restarting somebody's heart while doing CPR, but medics with ADV will also have defibrillators, which is basically super CPR. You access it on the CPR menu, and all that does is it's a super increased chance of basically restarting the patient's heart if they don't have a heart rate. Once they have a heart rate and it's stable, and by stable I mean within the normal threshold, 45 to 119, but generally speaking 60 is like the golden range for heart rates, but anywhere between 45 and 119 is generally normal. Once there's that, it's okay to give them a morphine if they're in pain. Generally I'd err on the side of caution when it comes to giving somebody morphine if they're on the lower spectrum of their heart rate levels before you give them a morphine, because generally if you give somebody a morphine when their heart rate is low or in the bad threshold, then you can cause their heart to stop and they can go into cardiac arrest and that can kill them. So don't do that. Just like you can overdose yourself, you can overdose your casualties as well. And finally, if his heart rate is stable and blood levels are okay but he's still unconscious, give him an EpiPen and generally just shout at him until he decides to wake up. If you give him an EpiPen and he doesn't immediately wake up, then just wait a little bit. Don't jam him with another one, because again, you can overdose him on EpiPen. Just jam him with one, wait a little while. It could just be a matter of their heart rate and their blood pressure just getting back to normal levels, and then they'll wake up. That's generally all you need to know about advanced medical. It's not hard, it's not difficult, it's basically basic with extra steps. And if you do things correctly, you can actually get people up far quicker in advanced than you do in basic. You just simply need to follow the steps in the right order. Alright? That's all we need to do. Piece of piss. Let's go shoot some people.